So welcome to the cities, towns, and counties that issue solar permits and to the concerned citizens that want to learn more about the Solar App Plus software. We're excited to have you here. Sierra Club North Star chapter and Third Act Minnesota are hosting this webinar because we are concerned with the growing climate crisis and see the standardization of permitting as one way to speed our transition to clean energy. I'm Carolyn Ham, one of the co-facilitators for Third Act Minnesota. Third Act Minnesota is a community of elders 60 or older who have come together to advocate for climate action and to revive our democracy. We are one of 38 working groups throughout the country with more than 100,000 members nationwide. And with that, Chris, could you introduce yourself and the North Star chapter?
Yeah, thanks so much, Carolyn. Everybody, my name is Chris Acuna, and thanks for joining us today. I'm the Climate and Clean Energy Organizer with the Sierra Club North Star chapter, Minnesota's branch of the National Sierra Club chapter. And the Sierra Club is 50,000 Minnesotans empowered to protect our community's well-being through environmental protection. We work through grassroots political action, pairing volunteer energy with full-time staff to strategically address Minnesota's most pressing environmental issues, of which we see the clean energy transition as one of those. So back to Carolyn.
Thanks so much, Chris. Now, you may be wondering, why are these advocacy groups digging down to the level of local permitting issues? The reason is simple. We want to accelerate the transition to 100% clean energy for our state. And one of the ways we can do that is to lower the cost of installing solar panels for individuals. Delays can occur at multiple points along the installation process, and SolarAPP Plus offers a way to speed up that permitting process. As we all know, time is money when you are building. SolarAPP also offers standardization so that solar installers don't have to learn hundreds of different local procedures. Permitting standardization can lower the learning curve for new solar installers, which we hope will lead to more installers and lower prices due to increased competition. Finally, SolarAPP is a tool for the future. Even if you're not processing many solar permits currently, the price of solar continues to go down, and more people will be looking to cut their energy bills and gain independence with solar panels. SolarAPP Plus helps you prepare for our clean energy future. So I just want to take you briefly where we're going today. We're going to begin our presentation with an overview of SolarAPP from Patrick Hayakawa from the SolarAPP Foundation, followed by hearing from local jurisdictions here in Minnesota about their experience adopting the software. You will also learn how easy it is to get grant money from the Department of Commerce to help with any staff time needed to adopt the app. Finally, we will leave plenty of time for our local jurisdiction attendees to ask any of your questions about the process and or the results from adopting the app. We hope that by the end of this webinar, you will be motivated to schedule a 20-minute meeting with SolarAPP Plus to see if it is right for you. And with that, Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Terrific. Thank you, Carolyn. Let me see if I can get my screen share going here properly. And da, da, da. 1 second. There it is. How's that? All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Patrick Hayakawa with the SolarAPP Foundation, where I lead our jurisdiction outreach and education. First of all, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Chris. We have just been thrilled working with Third Act Minnesota and the Sierra Club and the many jurisdictions we'll talk about in Minnesota who are currently using SolarAPP Plus and the many partners, some of which are on the panel, that have helped make that happen. I should say, as an aside, I know we're going to talk a lot about Minnesota because we're really excited about Minnesota on this presentation. However, as I recall, there are attendees on this webinar from all over the country. So if you're in Minnesota, great, you'll learn a lot about that, and you can be proud that Minnesota, as we'll talk about, is a leader on this topic. If you are in another state, welcome, and thank you for being here because I think you'll learn some things that are hopefully relevant to your goals and your jurisdictions as well. So I'm going to start with a number, and that number is 16. 16 is the number of Minnesota cities and towns that are already using instant automated permitting in the form of SolarAPP Plus. Why is that number notable? That's because it is third in the nation among all other states in terms of the number of municipalities and permitting jurisdictions that are using SolarAPP Plus instant automated permitting. The two that you are behind, California and Maryland, have a little bit of an unfair advantage in that they have state laws requiring the use of automated permitting technologies to review and issue residential solar permits, which is what we're going to talk about today, the automated review and issuance of residential rooftop solar permits. Minnesota has the distinction of being number 3, but number 1 among states where adoption is completely voluntary. City leaders like all of you, concerned citizens, doing this because you think it just makes sense from the point of view of the energy consumer, from the point of view of the municipal staff, and from the point of view of the contractors and solar installers. So that's what we're going to cover today. My job at the SolarAPP Foundation, we are a foundation, we're an independent 501c3. My job is pretty simple and straightforward. It's to speak with as many local governments across the country as possible to understand their permitting goals, help them evaluate whether solar permitting automation can support those goals, and if so, help them make it happen. Prior to working at the foundation, I have worked for 15 years in local economic development, so I've worked in local government. We see our mission, we see our job at this foundation as to empower local governments, regardless of their geography, regardless of their size, regardless of their budgets, to have access to the cutting edge technologies that can make their jobs easier and to make life better for the constituents they serve. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Diving in a little bit for the agenda, at least my agenda for the next 10 minutes or so, I want to share with you what SolarAPP Plus is and what it is not. I want to talk a little bit about how it supports local governments, specifically by providing higher quality contractor applications to municipalities, providing safe and code compliant installations. We'll talk a little bit about efficiency and time savings, but I think it's important to understand SolarAPP's primary function is a public safety function. We want workmanship in the field to be high quality. We want people to have access to energy, but we want people to do so in a way that protects their communities and their homes, right? That's the point of safe permitting. We also want to lead to results like reduced workload for municipal staff, who in my experience are constantly being tasked to do more with less, increasing responsibilities, lowering budgets in many cases, and ultimately lowering energy costs for consumers. That's the proposition that we're interested in here. Time permitting, we'll talk a little bit about how in practice a city or community would do this if they choose to do so. So to the basics, what is SolarAPP Plus in one sentence? SolarAPP Plus is a free online platform that instantly processes code-compliant residential solar permits, generally made available by towns as an optional pathway alongside their existing processes, meaning no new software and no new training for your staff. Okay. Before I get too detailed, though, on the solution, I do want to talk a little bit more about the problems that this technology is built to solve, some of which Carolyn already touched on. There's two broad categories of challenges. One is the challenge at the local level, staff being burdened with poor quality plans from contractors, often cancellations or revisions that make more busy work for everybody, maybe difficulty hiring or retaining qualified permit technicians. You also see requirements varying widely from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. This can cause confusion from installers about what the protocols are to receive a permit and to make code compliant installations. All of this leads to impacts for consumers like delays, unsafe installs, and higher costs, painful for both the jurisdiction and the consumer. Other problem area is at the national level. I do not have to talk too much to this audience, I'm guessing, about the challenges with our current energy crisis and the nation's growing demand, not just for energy broadly, as we're seeing with issues in international politics and global affairs, but specifically the continued demand for sources of clean energy. Okay. There's estimates that we will need up to 650 million clean energy appliances to meet those climate and energy needs. What's the problem? The problem is that the United States has over 20,000 different permitting jurisdictions that are responsible for vetting the safe installation and construction of those appliances. That can lead to unique processes in each jurisdiction, contributing to costs and delays that we've talked about. Estimates are that those soft costs could add as much as $1 trillion to the clean energy transition in the United States. Oh, went backwards. Third problem area, this was my area of interest when I was in local government, was economic development. Lots of data showing that these inefficiencies don't just raise cost, they cause headaches and actually reduce the number of options available to consumers who are pursuing clean energy options. So this is a direct quote from a solar installer who had formerly been operating in the state of Colorado. He said, if SolarAPP Plus were more widespread in Colorado, we wouldn't be closing a branch office. We're not the only ones leaving the state. Installers really struggle, particularly smaller businesses struggle to grow in what they see as a fragmented or confusing permitting landscape. Okay. This problem, though, I think it's important to understand, is not the fault of any local government. It's not really of your making. But the point that we think is that local permitting offices, while they aren't the source of the problem, it's really important to engage them because they really, really can be part of the solution for both of those problem sets that we discussed, the local jurisdiction, workload, and the nation's energy needs. So again, why should local governments think of themselves as a solution to this problem? It will be very difficult, if not impossible, for federal state policy to address this patchwork system of 20,000 unique processes. Secondly, we have this patchwork regardless of how excellent and expeditious any individual permitting office is. So a locality alone, through excellent permitting processes, cannot solve the diffusion problem, the patchwork problem. Okay, but what does that mean? It means change can happen jurisdiction by jurisdiction by the adoption of automated processes like SolarAPP that importantly standardize and clarify the rules for passing inspection. Okay, so what would that look like in practice as we move to the right side of the screen here? What we'll talk about is how you could be part of the solution, even if you have low volume, even if you have really good, clear, consistent processes, even if installers aren't complaining necessarily about difficulties. There's this larger problem that we think even small towns and large towns in Minnesota can be part of that solution by adding SolarAPP Plus as an optional pathway alongside their existing processes. Importantly, number two, keeping your local rules. We're talking about standardizing, but we're not talking about bringing in outside codes and standards or outside interpretations of codes and standards. So we can have a standardization of the interface of the application process, right? Without telling jurisdictions, we are not in the business of telling jurisdictions how they should define codes. We'll talk more about that later on the panel, I'm sure. And then three, all that leads to instant permits issued for qualifying residential rooftop projects. So that's it in theory. None of that works if we don't have a solution that in practice jurisdictions can actually understand and use in a convenient way. That's why SolarAPP, as we'll talk about, has been built first and foremost to be free, always, forever, for local jurisdictions. There are no setup fees, there's no ongoing contracts, there's no operating costs for local governments in SolarAPP ever. We actually don't even ask you to sign a contract. We ask you to accept terms and conditions, but we're not in the business of binding contracts and forcing jurisdictions to do something. Any one of the 355 jurisdictions using SolarAPP nationwide could cease to do so any day for any reason if they didn't want to, and there's nothing to stop that. They generally maintain it because they find that it ultimately helps them do their jobs better. We've also built the solution to be safe in that it's applying your latest structural, electrical, and fire codes and applying plan checks against those codes to every permit that SolarAPP reviews. Out of the box, no custom development, no high IT costs, supporting your existing processes regardless of how you currently do plan review, and staff friendly, so no new software to learn and no training. Talk about why that is. In the last few slides here, I just want to explain, though, what's the actual workflow. It's important to understand Why is there no new training for the staff or no new IT system? That's because while SolarAPP is a tool selected by the jurisdiction staff is not the primary user of the tool. The primary user of the tool are the permit applicants. So to be using SolarAPP, when we say 16 jurisdictions in Minnesota are using SolarAPP, what we really mean is they have a link on their website that says, good news, the city of Robbinsdale or Mounds View, for example, now accepts SolarAPP approvals. Go to gosolaраpp.org to enter your project information and receive an instant approval. That's where this slide picks up. The installer submits their application details and design specifications through our website. In real time, we're performing, when I say we, I mean the software system. It is not an AI system. It's a deterministic algorithm. It's a calculator, in other words, meaning if someone inputs something equivalent to 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of electrical code compliance, the system is catching that and saying, do not pass go, do not collect $200. So we perform that plan check, the same plan check that your team would otherwise perform manually. If they have valid licensure, if they are authorized to do business in your jurisdiction, if they've completed a compliant application, depending on your setup, we would either issue the permit directly on the city's behalf or give them their SolarAPP approvals and direct them back to your GovTech portal to upload those approvals, make their payments, and get their permit. All available 24/7, all accessible without human intervention. As we wind up here, I think it's important for people to understand where SolarAPP came from. We are not a Silicon Valley tech company that thinks we have the solution to all of life's problems. We are a coalition. We were built first by the US Department of Energy and specifically the National Renewable Energy Lab, launched in 2021 with intense input and review by code bodies like the International Code Council, National Fire Protection Association, the Institute for Building and Technology Safety, the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, solar industry groups, environmental organizations, and of course, the local governments that we are built to serve. We are now an independent nonprofit, no longer reliant on direct federal funding, and with a very bright future ahead of us as we've continued to expand our geographic footprint. That's made the product stronger, not just limited to one environmental condition, one set of code years, right? Now serving, again, over 350 jurisdictions across 19 states that you see here. Again, a word on quality and safety. We talk about efficiency and speed. None of that matters if we're not getting the same or better quality of installations in the field. How do we measure that? We are very proud that projects reviewed by SolarAPP Plus fail inspection almost 30% less frequently than those reviewed by conventional means. That is a better outcome for jurisdictions, for homeowners, and certainly the installers that we're pretty proud of. 2 words here on setup before we close it out and go to the panel. I mentioned that regardless of how your town is currently accepting solar applications, we have a setup built for you, one that we call standalone. If your town is a small office, maybe you only accept things over the counter or in person or by email, that's okay. We can set you up with a standalone in a matter of days. If you have a GovTech portal, an existing online system, that's great too. We would integrate with that, still run the plan check, validate all the system designs and installer criteria, issue our approvals, and then direct them to load it through the GovTech system into your portal. In either case, that can be set up in hours or days, very minimal staff training, and no change to your workflow for your existing permit pathways. 4 steps. I'll come back to this during the Q&A if people want to talk about the actual steps, just to keep it brief. And then I'm going to end with a word from Nick Henley, who wanted to be here, couldn't be here. One of your own there in Minnesota that was one of our early adopters. He said, the people, we were just thrilled with this, so I want to share it with the group. He said, the people at SolarAPP Plus have been phenomenal to work with and have been very responsive and helpful. I can count on SolarAPP Plus automated review process being thoroughly specific to our state electrical and building codes. The people behind the curtain there are experienced professionals within the industry. That was a very important point. I needed to verify myself before agreeing to partner with a national organization. So that's exactly what we'd like to hear. We want to be vetted, we want to be challenged, and we want to partner with you. So that's my comments for now. We can come back to the contact information and questions if people need, but thank you, Carolyn.
So Patrick, we actually did get a question that I think maybe you can answer, and if not, we can
Okay.
refer. Jason asks, can you review how the payment processing for the permit
Yeah,
flows?
I can. So what Jason is referring to is um, your jurisdiction has your permit fees, of course. We don't want to change that, right? We don't want to handle your money. We don't want you to handle SolarAPP revenue. As an aside, our revenue model is because we think we're adding value to the applicant. We do charge a $35 per permit fee on top of the jurisdiction's existing fees. Most installers are generally happy to pay that because, again, what they get in return is that instant review and issuance. So on this slide, what Jason is referring to, there's two ways of handling that. I'll start on the right side. On the with GovTech, it's sort of non-issue. They would not receive their permit. If you already are accepting payments online and issuing approvals instantly and have a system that can do that, we wouldn't change that. They would still make their payment directly through your GovTech portal. Maybe you're using a system like Excella or OpenGov or Tyler, eTrackIt, something like that. If those words ring a bell, know that there's a quick integration there. I'd be remiss if I didn't say the best one that has been tried and true is Baseline Technologies that we're going to hear about later. Um, and you can make your payments as you do through that system. If you uh, don't have a GovTech system, you could talk with Baseline about getting one set up, or you could go the standalone route, which would involve setting up a Stripe account, which we can then link your Stripe account, sort of like PayPal. It's a secure payments platform provider, and that usually takes about half an hour. We would do that with you and link it to your standalone account, and your payments would go directly into your account through that system.
Patrick, we have one more question. Diane asks, who oversees inspections to make sure installed as permitted, and where is the liability in improper installations?
Yeah, great. Both excellent questions. So SolarAPP is designed not to be an end-to-end permitting or inspections platform. You should keep your permitting portals that you use, and you should keep your inspection processes. So as part of the SolarAPP approval process, we would issue an inspection checklist, okay? And we could put you in touch with any of the Minnesota jurisdictions currently using that for their feedback on that. So the municipality, in short, still conducts the inspection, okay? And we might hear from Andy later, more experience on that. Liability remains with the installer, okay? So SolarAPP is we're not a third-party plan reviewer. We function as an extension of the building official and the permitting building staff, okay? So the city, in other words, maintains ample case law, as others on the call could probably say better than I, maintaining that public officials in operation of their duty are immune from liability with respect to that. Liability remains with the contractor for the quality of their work. So really no legal shift in accountability and liability. But I'll be curious to hear Andy's answer on those as we get to the panel too.
And that's all the questions we have right now, Patrick.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. So before we transition over to our panel, I know folks have a lot of questions for them. I quickly wanted to touch on the Minnesota incentive program that you might have heard about, maybe not. Are you all seeing, sorry, I've got a lot of tabs open with the Zoom. You're all seeing my Minnesota incentive slide?
Not yet, Chris.
Interesting. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. And now?
Yes.
Great. So I'll just touch on this quickly, and a couple of our panelists will probably uh, talk about this as well. But just so you have a basic understanding, back in 2024, the Minnesota legislature uh, directed the Department of Commerce to give out $2 million in SolarAPP incentive uh, to local governments. So basically, if you are a local government interested in adopting SolarAPP, this incentive is there for you to take advantage of, and that ranges from between $5,000 to $20,000. depending on your local government population size, and then a couple other bonuses. If you're a Green Step Cities, if you've processed a solar installation in the last year, just a single one. Um, if you Yeah, there are a couple ways you can hit the bonuses, but that can be up to $20,000. Reimbursement is super straightforward. It's a rolling application. So you would adopt SolarAPP. Once it's online, you just tell the Department of Commerce, and within 30 days, you will get your payment. And the funds, the really great thing is the funds can be used for anything, so they don't have to, a lot of cities are using this to put right back into sustainability and their climate goals. For a lot of smaller cities, funding can be an issue, especially now. So this is a great way to get some of your other climate or sustainability programs or goals off the ground. There's a link to full incentive details, and Kayla from Robbinsdale can speak to her experience getting the incentive, but really just wanted to highlight this as a great opportunity. We kind of see solar permitting, automated permitting as the future, so why not get paid to do it now while you can? So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Adam Schrader, the COO and co-founder of Baseline Technologies, Andy Schrader, Chief Building Official with Rum River Consultants, and Kayla Kurtz, Sustainability Coordinator and from the city of Robbinsdale. So we'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves briefly. And Adam, let's start with you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Chris mentioned, I'm Adam Schrader, co-founder and COO of Baseline Technologies, which is a Minnesota-based permitting and licensing platform for local governments here in Minnesota. I came across SolarAPP Plus and meeting Patrick just shy of a year ago now, I believe. And once we saw the platform and what it can do for both the jurisdictions reviewing solar applications and as well as for the contractors submitting them, we started integrating their system with Baseline last summer and into the fall. We went live with a handful of Minnesota municipalities shortly afterward, and since then I've personally helped over a dozen Minnesota cities and townships get onboarded onto both Baseline and SolarAPP Plus. What I've taken away from all of these onboardings is that this isn't a large software project or a large IT lift. It's a quick configuration, and once it's running, it stays running. I'll get into the specifics once we hit the Q&A section, but that's about it for me, so I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thank you, Chris. My name's Andy. I'm the Chief Building Official and co-owner of Rum River Consultants. We're a contract building official firm in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you can either be a city employee or a contract building official, and that's what we do here. I was a municipal employee starting in 2003. That's when I started in this profession, back in the day when we actually had paper and pencil and stamped plans. And I remember very well when we thought the next greatest thing was a self-inking stamp. And that was just the latest and greatest thing. And then we came to fillable PDFs, and we thought that was the neatest thing since sliced bread. But now this is really something, a tool that I can see, a valuable tool in our toolbox that will not only allow us to look down the road, but also around the corner. As technologies come on board, this is something that I've seen. I jumped on board really quickly, like Adam, just to see the power of this tool. So I appreciate the opportunity to share our experiences and my experience as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Kayla, that leaves you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kayla Kurtz. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the city of Robbinsdale. And Rum River Consultants is our building official. So I work very closely with Andy and Adam on a pretty regular basis. Robbinsdale is a small community of about 15,000 people. We border just the north side of Minneapolis. So we're a very urban and fully developed community as well. So that comes with some challenges when it comes to solar deployment. But over the last few years, we've been really aggressively tackling our sustainability and climate goals. So when this SolarAPP opportunity came across my desk and the potential for some additional funding, I was very intrigued, and it piqued my interest almost instantly, mostly because seemed like a creative way for my sustainability work to start to delve into the world of buildings and the community development department. So I shared this opportunity with my community development director, who we quickly looped in Andy and Adam as well, and came to the conclusion that it would be a good opportunity for Robbinsdale to pursue. And thanks to the support and great partnership of Andy and Adam, we were able to incorporate SolarAPP into our permitting process very quickly. And yeah, I'll happily speak to the incentive process as well later, because I can guarantee you it was very straightforward. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So yeah, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. We've got some here to start us off. So maybe this one is for Patrick. What does a typical SolarAPP submission look like from the contractor's side?
Yeah, I can. I thought about sharing that, and maybe instead of showing it, I'll just talk about it. So it it the submission process sort of looks like a Google form on steroids. Okay, so rather than uploading plan sets and designs, which are good, but can have variations in what they show and how they're presented, we're trying to get it really consistent and take all the same information that would be in those diagrams and get it entered into discrete fields. So they're entering information like what's the type of roof covering, what's the address, examples of a verification we'd be doing in real time is we would check against GIS layers to make sure that the address they provide actually exists in the jurisdiction they are applying for and the areas where they have licenses. We're also validating their licenses to make sure that if they're not certified or not licensed to be doing business, they're not submitting applications in your jurisdiction. So what we're hoping is that rather than in some models, the conventional model where they can kind of throw the information on your proverbial desk and put the burden on the municipality and say, you tell me if I have a code compliant plan, or you tell me if I'm good enough. A little of the responsibility is on them out of the gate to know their stuff, right? And to get their answers right. And your staff is not being pinged with them saying, well, should I work with your office or the office in the next town over? Or are you on the 2018 codes or have you not updated yet? All those things that can happen. We have a customer service team that if they're getting an error on their application, they're getting a code, they're getting explanation as to why that particular response is not code compliant, and they're getting our active support and getting a safe and compliant input there. It's about 50 questions, should take them 30 to 45 minutes. They can also save templates. So if there's certain designs they use over and over again, that shaves another 15 or 20 minutes off of their inputs.
Anybody else want to add anything to that, Adam or Andy? No, we can move on to the next question.
Oh, Patrick addressed that very well.
Yeah, I was just
you.
going to jump in there and say, yeah, likewise, and that from the contractors that I've seen go through the platform, no complaints. It's all very, very simple for them to go through, and like Patrick said, just a series of inputs that they enter, and then they proceed with the next step.
Great. This one, as a building official, what were you most concerned about before adopting, and how did it actually play out? So, Andy, maybe that's for you.
That's a really good question, and I guess my hesitation at first was the unknown. I wasn't familiar with this application process or this tool, if you will. So that was my immediate hesitation, was just not knowing about it. But like baseline, and Patrick said too, is so much of this is processing the data, not the documents. And that really helps me get my head around this whole process, because like Patrick said, they're telling us how they're meeting code compliance instead of us sifting through their documents to find that very information.
Great. Thank you. Kayla, this one is for you. What questions or concerns were most important to you and or the team at Robbinsdale when you began evaluating if SolarAPP was right for your city?
Yeah, I mean, really similar to what Andy just voiced, but honestly, when I first learned about the SolarAPP opportunity, I wasn't even very familiar with our permitting process in Robbinsdale, because it's not my department. I don't, I don't review permits a day to day and or really connect that much with the building department. So I was wondering, would this really work with our current process? Like SolarAPP says that it will. And, are we going to be creating redundancies or adding additional work to our team? Am I going to be stepping on toes by suggesting that we look into this? At just about a year ago when we learned about SolarAPP, we had very recently started working with Rum River and had adopted this new baseline technologies. So I wasn't sure if SolarAPP would integrate with that or if it was just going to, add another task to the to-do list. So those were our questions and concerns, but by bringing in multiple departments and having just honest conversations with Andy and Adam about what this would look like, we quickly answered those questions and figured out that it was going to work out.
Awesome. How long does it take from the day jurisdictions decide to adopt until they're live? This is also a question I've heard a lot in my, advocacy talking to different cities is they wonder, yeah, how long is this going to take? Is this going to be a lot of staff time? What does that look like? So maybe this is Patrick or Adam.
I can start, and then I'd love to hear Adam's feedback too. So the first thing I'll say is speed is important. Speed is our view, not the most important. So we want to be quick. We want to give you all the information. We want to make this a light lift for every department involved. We also don't want to rush it. So we want to make sure that we're moving forward with this in a way that all departments understand. So as Kayla said, Kayla might not have recently had prior to Solar other projects that really involved the permitting department all that much. As Carolyn said at the top, it's not self-evident why people who care about sustainability would be giving ideas to the permitting department. That is sort of unnatural, right? Or foreign to many of the issues that our local governments are faced with building. So for example, it might not be a big lift, but let's take the finance department. There's not a lot that to set up SolarAPP we would need the finance department to do. For example, it's not really changing how they do their accounting or creating lots of accounts or how money gets, but we do need their buy-in, and we need to make time to set up a 30-minute meeting if they want to explain that and show them why Stripe was selected. Let's say back to Jason's question about setting up those processes. What is Stripe? Do you have a Stripe account? Should we set up a Stripe account? Is that expose us to risk? So we would want to take time to answer those questions. Far and away for that reason, the process of evaluating SolarAPP Plus and making sure it's aligned with every department's goals and needs takes more time than the actual implementation. Okay. So we don't want to rush that evaluation stage. We want every stakeholder at the table. And we like to be challenged, right? We like people, as Andy, I'm sure, did at one point, or say, okay, show us how you would approve this project. Show us how the inspection checklist would support the inspection of that project. Similar, I'm still thinking about Diane's question. I want to make sure we answer that thoroughly. How does this change, other potential areas of risk, right? So we want to answer all those questions. Once we get people, I won't say trusting, but seeing that we can issue permits the same way that they do plan review with the same commitment to quality, then it's a matter of each team member looking down and say, I think this works. Should we do it? If the answer comes back yes, it's a matter of setting up your SolarAPP registration, which is simply where we input your jurisdiction boundaries in your code parameters. That takes about an hour. We just did it with a county-wide government in Maryland, population over 1 million people. Still took them an hour to set up their registration. Okay. Then you have to set up your instant workflow, which if you are not on a GovTech system, is a matter of setting up the Stripe account, which again takes 30 minutes. If you are on a GovTech system, as Adam can attest to better than anyone, let's say you're on Baseline or you think about getting on with Baseline, it's a matter of us working with them, taking it maybe an hour to set up the permit type, the instant workflow, and toggling that button on. So by far, the burden is on reviewing and understanding, and we will work with you on that process. But in terms of the technical implementation, that can be done in a matter of hours or days. Our current record from a jurisdiction saying, yes, we want to do this, to being live is 4 days.
Yeah, I'll finish that up here. Patrick, thank you very much for the overview. And I'll echo a lot of what you said is, yeah, a lot of it is in the explanation of it. That's what I found in my experience is explaining what it is, how it works, because coming into a city that hasn't heard of this for the first time, especially in Minnesota, hearing that they can get incentive funds from the Department of Commerce for just adopting this tool, and it doesn't cost them anything to start it, doesn't cost anything every year. It's kind of just showing them that it's credible, it's real, and that other people have already done it. That's where a large portion of the time is spent. But again, as Patrick mentioned, once we actually get to implementing it, at least on our side, I think the fastest one that I've done has been around 20, 25 minutes. Of course, I've done multiple ones, so I have a template on my side as well. There's a couple extra steps that we can get into with the incentive application that's specific to Minnesota that takes a little bit of time as well. But the actual implementation can vary, as Patrick mentioned, depending on if you're doing the standalone or the integrated method. But I've got the integrated method down with baseline to a pretty small amount of time.
Wow, that is great, and great to hear that it's not a super onerous process for our cities.
Chris, we do have a question. It says our city has not adopted state building code. Does that make a difference in using SolarAPP?
It depends. It depends on what building codes you are on. So we have most state building codes are based on, or local building codes are both based on national or international, like NEC, National Electrical Codes, or international building codes. Generally, if you're on a code year for either 2017 or later, those settings are sort of pre-built or baked into SolarAPP Plus. It's just a matter then of toggling those on. If you are on older code years, I'd be surprised, but we do encounter it sometimes. Say 2015 or earlier. Those can be a challenge because they actually don't have a lot of prescriptive guidelines for solar in general, right? I'm not a code expert. I'd be curious Andy's take on this. But in general, if you're on 2017, 2018 or newer, we're good to go. We also always like to hear if you have local amendments and local requirements, and make sure we can incorporate those too.
That's a great point, Patrick. In Minnesota, especially, or exclusively, that's where I'm most familiar with, is the building code is what's called a statewide standard. So whether you've adopted the building code or you administer the building code, the work still needs to meet the building code. And I know there's a patchwork of processes and standards across the country, and it would go by what the state building code says. So again, in Minnesota, it's a statewide standard. So there are jurisdictions, counties, and cities in the state of Minnesota that have not adopted nor administer the code. But that doesn't alleviate the responsibility of the contractor to follow that standard for live load, dead load, clearance around the edge of the roof to the solar panels. So there still are standards to be met, notwithstanding if a jurisdiction actually adopts or administers the code.
Great, thank you.
Great point, Andy. I would also add on that challenge of like, hey, staying up to date on code. I mean, that is a big part of a building official's job in understanding that, but we generally don't wait for jurisdictions to tell us when they need new codes. We have our own codes and standards team. Their job is to stay on top of and even help develop these codes as they're being released. So for example, I believe it was January that California as a state went into the 2024 I codes. So they didn't have to report to us, hey, we knew that. And then at midnight on December 31st, we had spent months prepping that. We can click a button and then all of your codes are updated for you. So we generally are trying to help kind of ease that burden, take that off your plate, as well as the changing technologies of solar, the PV arrays, the racking systems. Our system is performing checks to make sure that that equipment is compatible and being used in the way that the installer says it is. So that's another area that we're trying to stay with you ahead of and with the changes and keep the system responsive to that.
Thank you both. Because, yeah, I know that it's a common question about how Minnesota cities handle that kind of state code situation. Um, Kayla, I wonder if you could speak to both kind of the incentive and how that went for you. And I know a lot of other cities are worried about kind of grant reporting and this being an onerous, like, is this too good to be true type feeling. Could you just, what would you share with other folks who are kind of on the fence and don't know if this is going to be a lot of work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had similar feelings when I first learned about the project or the program too. Like, is this is this real? It seems too easy. And as someone who does a lot of grant writing on a daily basis, trying to get external funding to do sustainability projects, this was by far the easiest and most straightforward application that I've submitted. And I have also done a number of state grant applications. And so, like, just comparing this SolarAPP incentive application to some of the other state grants, it was very, very simple and straightforward. And um, I think from the day that we submitted our application to receiving the payment, maybe a month had passed. So it was a very quick turnaround. I was getting updates very frequently from the staff person at the Department of Commerce about our application being processed and when our payment was being processed and things like that. So it was a very informed process. And most grant applications are asking for narratives or things like that. But the information that this incentive application seeks is all very objective and just wanting to know more about the city's population and um, previous solar permitting process, and what day did SolarAPP go live in your community, and where can we access this on your website, things like that. So super, super simple.
That's what we like to hear. Yeah, I think Adam shared that, 15 minutes is what it took for some of the other cities to get their incentive um, report in. And I know, this question, how many fund, this is a question I've both gotten yesterday, in fact, how much money is left in this fund? And I believe uh, there's about 16 cities so far who have adopted SolarAPP in Minnesota and a couple more who are working on it and getting adopted. So there's about that, the latest update I have is probably that there's around 225,000 has been sent out to jurisdictions. So that would mean 1.75 million remains, 1.7 around there. So a big chunk of it left, and there is in the statute 500,000 of that was earmarked for Greater Minnesota, or actually 1.5 million was for communities in XL territory, and then 500,000 in for jurisdictions outside of XL territory. So whose utility is not XL. We've got another question here as we maybe start to wrap up. Um, what happens if solar installer submits a project that doesn't qualify? And Patrick, I think you touched on this a little bit already.
Yeah, well, two things, and I might not have covered this in detail. Two ways in which we could mean doesn't qualify. Again, SolarAPP is not trying to take over all of a jurisdiction. Well, we're not trying to take over any. If people still want to, apply manually, that option remains. But I would say automated review is not necessarily appropriate for all types of solar. So we could share in a follow-on call what we call the eligibility criteria. SolarAPP Plus is built for your most basic and common residential rooftop systems. Okay. Under 4 pounds per square foot, up to 38.2 kilowatts, things like that. So we would post our eligibility criteria. The installer would have to attest that they understand and they're submitting something like that. If it's a ground mount project, if it's a commercial project, we want to free up your staff's time to spend their expertise on those more elaborate projects that deserve manual review and scrutiny. If it's this bread and butter residential stuff that we have shown time and again can be routed, can sort of you've got a dishwasher now, put the glasses and the plates in the dishwasher, keep the pots and pans, right? For a dumb analogy. Okay, so if it's not eligible for that, the system would flag it and say, hey, SolarAPP is not meant for this type of project. Now, if it is meant for that type of project, the project itself is eligible, but they simply have a design input that is not code compliant, we would flag that in real time. Sort of like when if you're doing your taxes by TurboTax or something, you see the number get red or it changes in real time. That's what SolarAPP is doing. So they would get an error code. We have a help library that would tell them an index of what the issue might be. They could also schedule basically office hours with our technical staff and say, hey, I always design this way. Why is it telling me this? And we would say, well, actually, Minnesota Building Code says to do it this way. If you change it and do this, and they would get an answer. So basically, it's blocked and rerouted for support until they can get all green checks up and down the board and then submit it. That whole process would basically be invisible to your city because we don't want them bothering you with, unless there's a real codes and standards question about why it is, but we don't want your time tied up with these back and forths on their install questions.
So we've had a couple of questions come in, and I think we've answered a couple, but want to make sure we answered them correctly. One was, what is the cost for the SolarAPP application or using SolarAPP? And I emphasize that there is no cost to the jurisdiction to use SolarAPP in any way, and that the contractor pays a per application fee. Is that correct? Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct. They would pay $35 for a PV project, an additional $25 if it includes an energy storage system. SolarAPP can permit energy storage systems, which are, of course, becoming more popular, right?
And then we've had some questions about the jurisdictions that have adopted. The question was Duluth, and I believe the answer is Duluth has not. Is that correct?
Correct. At this time, Duluth has not adopted.
And I don't know if we have a quick list of the 16. We could perhaps send that out in a follow-up.
And there is a map that I believe Amanda linked in the chat there, which will tell you, well, there's the map view and then there's the list view. Maybe we can get the map view too. But yes, we could distribute, that's public information, so we could distribute that list as well.
Right. And then just wanting to make sure that we're going to have everyone, the panelists, contact information because people may want to reach out to you.
Yeah, we can certainly, if that is okay with our panelists, we can certainly send out their information. If not, we are more than happy, Carolyn and I, to have more conversations, more questions, and connect you with either these panelists or other people in the state or at SolarAPP who could help answer your questions. The Department of Commerce has a great, on their incentive page and program page, they also have a great helpline with their staff. So we will send all of that out in the follow-up and happy to provide more information. I was gonna ask maybe one more question, but I want to make sure we have enough time to close and be respectful of people's times. Yeah, I'm gonna ask one more question. We're gonna keep it quick. One question we've been getting from a lot of cities too is like, we don't really have a lot of solar permits right now. Why should we kind of bother with that? And Andy, maybe I'll have you answer.
Thank you, Chris. And that is something that's understandable to come up. And I really like the way this is answered because we need to develop standard operating procedures, SOPs, for those processes that we don't come across very often because you might forget. A plan reviewer doesn't have that checklist in front of them, so they may not necessarily remember the required steps, the clearance around the solar panels, the clearance to the rake and the eave and the ridge and things like that. So to have a process in place that checks all of those boxes consistently and accurately is very, very important. But then likewise, or alternatively, the high volume. Those are really supported because it reduces the time frame because of those standardized processes. if that helps.
Great. That was, yeah, super quick and super succinct, and that does help a lot. Okay. Um, Now I'm going to, yeah, close this out here. Uh, this is Patrick's contact info at SolarAPP, or I guess, yeah, SolarAPP, and we will send all of our contact information as we following up. So now that you've attended, this webinar, kind of what's next. And so we really want folks to, you know, see if SolarAPP is right for your community. So you can go directly and set up a one-on-one 20-minute to half-hour assessment with SolarAPP to see if it's right for your jurisdiction. And that's what the gosolarapp.org/jurisdictions that Patrick is sharing right now. And yeah, lastly, just wanted to highlight, we've seen, why this is important to us, at the Sierra Club at Third Act, Minnesota. Why we think this is so important is because, we're seeing fossil fuel infrastructure skyrocket in price, fossil fuel usage skyrocket with data centers and with external supply chain issues, and everyone is racing to do all of the more fossil fuels. Gas is exploding, and so we view this as a key into diversifying and getting clean energy, not just more clean energy in Minnesota faster and easier, but that really distributed energy so that it is in the hands of Minnesotans and residents, so that it can clean our grid, clean your local environment, and lower your costs. So with that, I think we'll be closing unless any of our other co-panelists have any other closing remarks. Thank you all so much for coming. We will send all the things we went over today, as well as some more info out with the follow-up. And please, if you know somebody who wasn't able to attend today, share the recording. This session was recorded. We'll be sharing that out, and to a local jurisdiction that you think might find this helpful. So thank you all so much for coming.